Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back, everyone. It's time for the Kev Baker Show, right here on Truth Frequency Radio, www.tfrlive.com. Tonight is going to be a really information-packed 2 hours of radio because I've not got one guest. We've got two guests coming up in the show today. And I started off today, I woke up, there was no guest organised for the show. What a day I've had. It's been a day of synchronicities and it's led us to where we are tonight. And tonight we're going to be talking about something I'm calling, oh no, it's Momo. Over here in the UK, we have been absolutely bombarded about news about this online game that really shot to public attention in the middle of last year. We've talked about the Slender Man before on the show, but this new internet sensation, craze, meme, challenge, call it what you may, this takes things to another level, albeit just as eerie, and in some respects, I feel, quite interconnected. You know, right now we're living in a world where we live two lives. One here, in this space, time, in the 3D world that we're all used to. Nuts and bolts, you can touch things, everything that you'd expect about the real world. But more so, and ever increasingly faster, we're moving into a time where we have two lives, one here and one in the digital world. And from time to time, you know, you see memes and challenges coming along. And then, on occasion, there are things that seem to transcend from the digital world into our own. And that's the kind of stuff we're definitely going to be getting into tonight, talking about the Momo challenge. And to help me do this, somebody who spoke about this on his own before on his own show, and just last week joined me on the show to get into topics that extended into the Slender Man. We've got Ryan Gable from the Secret Teachings rejoining us because I think today's show that I was putting together really connects onto the back of the show we done last week. And I was messaging with Ryan today, and the synchronicities that were at work were unbelievable. And then out of the blue, Charlie Robinson independently got in touch with me. I off the cuff mentioned that we were going to be doing this show tonight, and he said, you've got to be kidding me. I'm sitting listening to this guy, Ryan Gable, speaking to Mark Devlin right now. So it's been a day of synchronicity after synchronicity, and that is why we're here tonight. So without any further ado, before we get into this latest kind of wave of Momo madness that's sweeping the planet, let me bring on to the show the brilliant Ryan Gable. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Kev, I'm doing great. I am so happy to be back on the Kev Baker Show.
Well, you know, I was thinking there just 1 minute before the show, it's almost as if the topic that we're going to touch on tonight, I thought it might even have an effect on our ability to go to air because you were having problems with your technology. And then when we connected on Skype, it was acting a bit funny again. And isn't that the way things seem to go nowadays? You know, things from the digital world have an effect on our very own reality. We touched on this with the Slender Man the other night, but this Momo challenge, Ryan, this is all the news over here in the UK, even to the kind of lengths that we've got the Police Scotland up here, tweeting out, informing parents that not to be too overly concerned about this because these kind of internet crazes come along from time to time, but just to make them aware and to maybe it's a good time for them to have a conversation, you know, with their children about online safety. But Momo, you've looked into this. I hate to call it a craze, a sensation. Talk to us about your ideas around this whole Momo challenge that they say is leading children to be encouraged to commit suicide, Ryan.
Yes, Kev. This is something that in the United States, I was surprised to see some of the articles you sent me. This is much more discussed over the pond. Here in the United States, this is not very well discussed in media. There aren't many people who know about this in media, and the very few people who have reported on this, these are usually very local stories. There was one out of Billings, Montana, a listener sent me a few weeks ago. There are a couple of stories here or there that made national headlines. Of course, the Slender Man stabbing, that took place back in 2013, 2014, and the girls that stabbed the third girl, there were two girls that stabbed the third girl, I think it was 19 times and they left her for dead in the woods, and she crawled out to a road bleeding to death, and a bicyclist passing by saw her and got her help. That story was the only story that really got national attention. All of these other stories that we've heard about the Momo game or the Momo challenge or Slender Man tend to be very, very localized. And in all of the stories that I've seen, some of the news reports I've read or some of the videos I've watched, the one out of Montana was really, really interesting because the reporters were legitimately, it sincerely seemed like they were disturbed by the imagery and by what Momo as this character supposedly has been doing, and that is now contacting people through social media and contacting children specifically, threatening the children. This is what happened to a boy in Montana. I want to say she, but it threatened the boy, said, if you don't do what we say or what I say, then we're going to kill your friends. And it listed all of that little boy's friends. And I guess that little boy went and told his grandma. She contacted police, and that's how that story made headlines. In a lot of these cases, it's the exact same story where this entity, this digital monster, whatever you want to call it, a she and it's basically a demon. It's a devil. Momo is in Mandarin is devil. Mo is Mandarin for demon. It means demon, or devil, or demon. So when you have a look at what the word means, demon, and then I listened to this news report, it kind of clicked for me a couple of weeks ago exactly what this was in relationship to some of the other things we discussed last week on the show, Kev. And that is, these news reporters were looking at the story, and it didn't really seem like it was scripted to me. A lot of news stories are very scripted, and they were just talking and said, "This is disturbing. The goal of the game seems to be to meet Momo." And they said, "We really don't understand what that means." And I thought, well, I know exactly what that means, because Momo means devil. It means meeting the devil. And I thought of two things. Meeting the devil. How are we meeting the devil? We're committing suicide, which is the ultimate challenge that is demanded by Momo, kind of like the Blue Whale Challenge. And then I thought of something else, and this connects everything together. I thought of a story I read out of Bartow, Florida. It has nothing to do with Slender Man. It has nothing to do with Momo, at least on the surface. This is a very disturbing story. I covered it around Halloween last year. The headline from ABC News read like this, Kev. 2 Satan-worshiping girls planned to kill middle school classmates, drink victims' blood. And the plan of these 2 girls, they were very young. One was also 12 years old, like we talked about on the last show. Tends to be young girls around 12 years old. There are a couple of boys or teenagers involved here or there, but usually 12-year-old girls. The first Momo death was actually a girl, 12 years old in Argentina, died of suicide, police say, from the Momo game. So these 2 Satan-worshiping girls, as ABC News and the police department there in Bartow, Florida called them, planned to literally kill dozens of their classmates, drink their blood, and eat their bodies. That's pretty intense for a couple of 12 and 13-year-old girls to come up with. And then they planned, this is how the article concluded with the police report, they planned to kill themselves so that they could meet Satan and so that they could have some form of communion with Satan. Now, that is exactly the story of Momo, except there's no...
I remember this story well. However, it's only listening to you now that it absolutely fits the kind of MO for this Momo game, because like you said, the ultimate challenge, the kind of the final dare given to any unwilling participants is actually to sacrifice themselves, and that way they finally get to meet Momo. So that crime that you're describing there, it absolutely ticks those boxes, and it's been said a lot in the UK media and even by the police over here that a lot of the Momo game, Momo challenge, WhatsApp suicide challenge, it goes by various names, but they're saying a lot of this has been run from the dark web and nefarious hackers who have got only our data. That's the only thing that they're interested in. You know, they're not caring, it's not about making the children commit self-harm or causing them to really want to commit suicide. They're only interested in data. Now, for me, I imagine there's a few nefarious characters jumping on the back of this, trying to do just that. However, Ryan, I think there's something much bigger at play here. And that's why I say this is another kind of form of when we see something in the digital world starting to have a real world effect here in our space and time. It's very similar to the Slender Man, albeit different. However, last week on the show, we brought up something very interesting that does connect the two, because it's almost as if something in that digital realm, or even further afield interdimensionally, is taking various shapes and forms at this time. And be it the Slender Man, or be it Momo, or be it other things that come along in the future, it seems to me that there's something bigger at play here, possibly even influenced by artificial intelligence.
Yes, that's a fantastic point, Kev. I know you talked to me about that off air relating to the D wave, something you discuss a lot here on the show. And that is exactly what I think this is when you break it down, when you connect all of this together. One of the things that, from the entertainment side of this, links the Momo and the Slender Man and all of these other manifestations to what you just said is the usage of the word manifest. In the Slender Man movie, there was a line that Slender Man, his infernal majesty, the devil, comes in a variety of forms. He manifests in a variety of forms. And I was reading this story. I saw Clyde Lewis posted this, but I had a listener send this to me last night before I saw Clyde posted it. It's out of the Manchester Evening News.co.uk, and it's the Haslingden Primary School. They put out this message, this warning to parents, because the kids in the school were watching innocent YouTube videos of cartoons, this cartoon pig, Peppa Pig, and this is, I think it's a popular show in the United States as well. It was edited in a way where I guess it became violent and there were violent images, and they say that basically Momo hacked into this video. That's how the article explained it. But one thing I noticed that was really, really disturbing is this connection, if we use the dots appropriately, between all of these different stories. Like you said, you had heard of the two girls in Florida. That's a huge part of this. Their suicide to meet the devil was the same as meeting Momo. In this case, posted in the Manchester Evening News at the Haslingden Primary School, they describe Momo in a curious way. They say another video clip is going by the name of Momo, which shows a warped white mask, which is promoting children to do dangerous tasks without telling their parents. Now, if we think on that for a moment, and we've heard about Slender Man, that is a description. As much as it is of Momo, Momo has this woman's face that's very distorted. I personally don't recommend looking it up. It's very disturbing to me. It's a woman's face, very distorted. It's on an animalistic body, and it has chicken legs, which is very common in depictions of demons and the devil. So you have this distorted woman's face. It's kind of a pale white. They described Momo as having a warped white mask-like face. And then if you look at Slender Man has this white, featureless face, exactly like Momo was described. So Momo, Slender Man, these are all just different manifestations of what I call him, capital H-I-M, his infernal majesty, the devil. They're different manifestations of this force that, yes, I think is probably, in a lot of ways, manifesting through the digital realm.
Absolutely, and I'm just been bringing up pictures there of the Slender Man and of Momo. And of course, Momo, it was taken originally from a sculpture that was created in 2016 over in Japan. Some say by an artist, others say by a movie studio. But the actual name of the sculpture is Mother Bird. And definitely when you see the full kind of Momo as opposed to just the face, it's just utterly creepy, utterly bizarre. And I wonder, we brought up the AI, and the reason I brought up the AI to Ryan earlier on was when you look at how machine learning takes place, we've talked about adversarial networks in the past, and basically it loves to have an opponent. That's how it learns. That's how it gathers more and more information by learning from that opponent. And that's why when you see them describing this almost as a game, almost appealing to the emotions of the children and knowing exactly what to say to scare them enough, Ryan, to hook them into this. That's why there's a part of me, and it's just speculation, obviously, but there's a part of me that says that there could very well be some of that darker AI at play here. And that might seem really out there to people, and I'm sure there'll be others who really sick of me bringing up Geordie Rose, but I think you have to, because I think it was more literal other than tongue-in-cheek when he said standing next to the D-Wave is akin to standing next to an altar to an alien god. And people think that's a kind of him being tongue-in-cheek, being kind of bravado of Geordie Rose, but I think it really was more literal, Ryan. And even in that same talk, he describes how they get 10% more resources back anytime they ask it a question. Very vague about what that means, but getting resources back when you put information in, it sounds like a form of communication that he's talking about. And that's why I have to wonder if this thing, this entity, alien, demon, whatever name you want to put on it, is having an effect on something like Slender Man, something like Momo.
Yeah, I think that Slender Man, Momo, these different manifestations coming very much from a digital world, because Slender Man started out in the digital realm, and now it has manifested into a movie. It's manifested into 12-year-old girls attempting to kill another girl. In other cases, a girl, there was a case back in 2013, I believe it was. It didn't make much news, but it was a little girl who waited for her mom to come home, and she had a knife, and she was ready to stab her mom. And in all of these cases, they say that they were doing this for Slender Man. So it has manifested from the digital into the physical. And when you say that, I think of Elon Musk when he said with artificial intelligence, it's like summoning the demon. The people that use that type of wording, it's sensational to a degree, but I think there's a lot of reality and a lot of, I don't necessarily want to say truth, but there's a lot of reality to a statement like that. It's not just sensationalism. And if you look at what technology, let's say experts in those fields say, whether it's with the D-Wave or it's just basic standard technological development, and then you compare that with these archetypes in movies and TV shows and in music videos even, these are references brought up in a broad spectrum of various forms of entertainment for children, for adults. You see it in popular shows like Stranger Things, kids' movies like Monsters Incorporated. You see this in adult movies like Alien with the face hugger. We see this theme of the parasite coming through from another world into our world. For example, in Stranger Things, it's the Department of Energy, right? And then we have in Monsters Incorporated, that's the energy department. And energy is a huge part of this, because if you remember there's a video game called, this has just reminded me of something I had taken a note of. There's a video game called BioShock.
Oh, yes. Brilliant game.
Yeah, what was that? Was that like Atlantis or something like that?
Yeah, they were underwater to begin with, but I think the latest kind of version of that game, we're on to 3 or 4 now. I think they're now out of the sea and onto land.
Oh, I'm way behind.
I know, it's the big kid that comes out and meets. Because I've got a teenage son, that's my excuse, and I'm going to stick to it, Ryan, okay?
All right, Kev. There's so you know the big daddies, these big like mechanical robots with the illuminated eyes, and they hold the or they don't necessarily hold on to them, but they walk next to the little sisters. The little sisters are protected by the big daddies. That kind of reminded me of Slender Man, because Slender Man, in some of the depictions, is standing next to, kind of as a protector in a way, but he's also a kidnapper because he takes kids into the woods, into his dimension, into his world in the mythos. But you have this big, tall, lanky, Slender Man standing and holding the hand of this little girl, and it kind of reminded me of BioShock because of the big daddy and the little sister. And then also when you see this wordplay like BioShock, shock, Slender Man is a bioelectrical phenomenon. In the Slender Man movie, for example, there's an electromagnetic energy that causes the lights to flicker on and off in this building that I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's a main character and she's being stalked by Slender Man. And so the lights flicker on and off. And it's the same thing in Stranger Things when the mom communicates with her son in the other world, the lights illuminate and almost blow out. And then when the demon, the Demogorgon, comes through the other world, the monster comes into our world, the lights flicker and go out. So it sucks the light out. And there's a famous line, for me famous because I've seen this movie so many times, Monsters Incorporated, where they find out at the end of the movie that laughter is 10 times more powerful than screams. So of all the fear that's generated, for all the fear that's used to power their world that they as monsters feed off of, when you laugh, it dissipates all that, and it's much more powerful than that darkness. So there's a connection here between the electrical phenomenon as well. And I think that also connects with what you said as we came into the show today about having technical issues here or there. This comes through the internet. This comes through perhaps a gateway or a portal, be that literal or be that metaphoric, from another world into our world. It's a force, and then it manifests in a variety of different characters that we might know from video games, from movies, from TV shows, from music videos, or we might know because we see it portrayed in the sphere of technology and technological development and AI and quantum computers and things like that. But I think it's all coming from the same source, Kev.
Absolutely. And, you've mentioned Elon Musk earlier and his talk about the demons. And Geordie Rose again, he brings up Elon when he's making another presentation. And he's kind of rubbishing the fact that people like myself, Anthony Patch, Elon Musk, and I use myself and Anthony Patch really on purpose there because he absolutely had one of our thumbnails for a show we done in his presentation. But he's like, it's ridiculous. This isn't demons that are coming through. I'll tell you what it is. It's more akin to aliens or H.P. Lovecraft's Ancient Old Ones. Now, if H.P. Lovecraft was around today, I guarantee he'd be writing about things that look like and sound like and walk like and talk like the Slender Man, and also this new Momo, the thing that is sweeping the internet right now. And when you see that the top technologists out there, Ryan, are talking about building altars to alien gods, comparing the AI to H.P. Lovecraft characters, this gives people out there a flavour, a taste of, why we talk about the things we talk about. And I think it lends them a lot more credence as well. And if you just observe what's going on, you take Slender Man, you take Momo, and there's going to be more of these things, Ryan. You bet your bottom dollar. How they're able to transcend from that digital realm into our 3D world. And I think we're onto something here. And just recently I was covering something called Mirror World. I'm still digging deep into this because this is literally the stitching together of an augmented / virtual reality that overlays our time and space in this physical dimension. And the more and more they stitch together this augmented virtual reality all around us, especially with the 5G and the omnipresence of all that signal that's going to be there, and the capacity for communications between devices and even ourselves, I think we're going to see more and more literal manifestations of the entities that we're talking about. We talk about terraforming the planet as opposed to geoforming. I think we're starting to meet the characters that we're making it perfect for you, Ryan.
That's a great description, great explanation, Kev. I agree with you. I think that's what we're witnessing. And I think that if you have a look at some of the information, a lot of this is archetypical. A lot of this is not necessarily somebody is sitting down. In fact, I don't think in maybe even a small fraction of the cases, people are sitting down and thinking, okay, what can we do to write a movie or to create a monster that has all of these different characteristics? I think that's something we should touch on very, very briefly, because when you look at movies and TV and music videos, when you look at technology, you look at tech companies, you look at just seemingly random stories in the news, everything has the same theme to it. Like I said, we both said about Momo and how Momo is defined. It's the same type of situation where you meet Momo, you meet the devil, Momo means devil, and then you have unrelated stories to a couple of girls who police say they watched some scary movies one night in Florida. They come back to school Monday morning and they're ready to murder their entire class, commit suicide, and meet the devil. You start to combine all of this together, there are way, way too many connections to the various forms of entertainment for this just to be pure coincidence. And there's way too many connections. There are way too many connections for this just simply to be a matter of what some might call a conspiracy. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I don't think people are getting together from Hollywood to Google and tech companies getting together and I have a story here I wanted to share with you about an anatomist, and they're all agreeing on the same thing. I don't think that's what's happening.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. I've got Ryan Gable here from thesecretteachings.info, and we're joining up tonight to talk about something that's very current in the news again, and it's the Momo challenge. Now, from time to time, I naively think because I've seen something on the internet, everyone has seen it. And just before the first break there, the show took a bit of a twist, because you've heard me giving a shout out to Nancy before. I was giving her husband a shout out on the show last night. Well, in the chat room over at tfrlive.com/chat, Nancy dropped a message, and I want to share with everyone. It says, "Sorry, Kev, I have to step away from the show. My son was listening in, and I didn't know it, and he is having I didn't know it, and he's having an anxiety attack because this showed up on his phone as a news article, and neither of us have heard about this before. I'm going to go and I'm going to calm him down." Now, I just take it for granted that everyone's heard about this topic by now because it looks like it's going viral on the internet, even to the point where over here in Scotland, like I was saying earlier in the show, they sent out a tweet trying to reassure parents like Nancy out there. Myself and Ryan are wondering just how many people around the world may be getting subjected to this at this current time, or previously in the months that have gone by, and in the future set to be affected by this. That's why it's probably even more important to talk about a topic such as Momo, Slender Man, to raise awareness out there for people who may actually be targeted. And on the screen I'm looking at a Police Scotland tweet that says online challenges like Momo may cause concern for parents. However, these, air quotes, challenges appear every few months, and we've seen other examples over time. Parents should not panic, but speak with their children about all aspects of their online world and explain the potential dangers. And that is very good advice. And when we were growing up, used to have the talk, that sit down with the parents, talk about the birds and the bees. And just as important as that is nowadays, I think we do have to have a conversation with our children about the fact that we have a digital life as well, and some of the things that go on there. Try to forewarn them. However, like we were speaking about earlier in the show, it seems that the media would love us to believe that this all came from a bunch of scam artists sitting somewhere trying to think up the best way or a new way to phish for our online data, get our bank details, carry out some fraud in our name. Then how ridiculous a scenario is that when you think about the fact that Momo is solely challenging or targeting younger people? You know, younger people aren't going about with bank details on their phone. There's not much to be harvested from a young person's phone in comparison to, say, an adult who may keep all of their passwords, all of their data on there, and there's going to be some monetary value for the scammers on the back of that. So again, the fact that this is targeting children in such a violent and evil way just makes it ridiculous to think that this comes from some boiler room, some elaborate internet scam on the back of a harmless statue that was made a couple of years ago. No, Ryan, I think we are looking at something far more nefarious here. And that really kind of affected me, that realising that Nancy, or somebody we know and somebody listening to the show out there, that this is really relevant for them at this time, and they hadn't heard of this before. So, you know, as interesting as it is, sometimes I call it the woo, and I like to have a good kind of laugh and almost like Twilight Zone stuff with these kind of topics. Vitally important as well that we raise awareness to maybe some who haven't heard of this before.
Exactly, Kev. That's why I do my show, The Secret Teachings. I know that's a huge part of why you do your show as well, because these are things we see. We are constantly paying attention. And for others that might not have the time to pay attention, so they listen to shows like yours, this is what we can help to inform people about, who otherwise might not have seen it or see it, but don't necessarily think or recognize the connection to other events and the very, very dark and dangerous, nefarious side of what this is. Because even if you came across this on the internet, it's a disturbing image that Momo sculpture is. You might not think much more about it. In fact, I saw it months ago. I didn't really think much about it. I just thought that was disturbing. I wish somebody wouldn't have sent that to me. But then I started to look into it, and I realized, oh, wow, this is really, really disturbing for another reason. And I don't think that it's a conspiracy. I don't think people in the entertainment industry and the tech world are getting together with others and they're trying to work with hackers to manipulate people's perception of reality and scare people and steal money from people. Let me give you an example of something that I found. This is all just based on mythology and folklore. So most of us know who Medusa is. Medusa is a gorgon, and that ties in with Dungeons and Dragons and Stranger Things with the Demigorgon. So Medusa, a mortal gorgon whom Perseus killed in mythology. A gorgon is one of three sisters from mythology, and they have snakes for hair, right? So the gorgon is one of three sisters. Well, I found something else that's interesting about that and how it relates to Momo. Just follow me along just here for a moment. There's a Slavic folklore about something called the Baba Yaga. Have you ever heard of that, Kev?
I've heard Clyde Lewis, probably you and Clyde Lewis mentioned that name before, but I would be lying if I said I know of it.
I don't know much about it myself. The very little I could find from the folklore, from the stories, is that the Baba Yaga is a supernatural being. And just like Medusa, although in the mythology that I've read, there's no direct connection between them, the Baba Yaga is one of three sisters, just like Medusa, or just like the Gorgon. The Baba Yaga is described as, and this is the word that's used in the stories that I've read in mythology or in folklore about the Baba Yaga. The Baba Yaga is a deformed and or ferocious-looking woman. Now, I want to note something else here. I came across a really, really obscure story. Obscure in the sense that it has nothing to do with Momo. It has nothing to do with Slender Man, but it has everything to do with Momo, and it has everything to do with Slender Man, and it has everything to do with so much of what you talk about on your show, Kev, in relation to technology and the human 2.0. It's an article from Live Science. It's about a woman named Alice Roberts. She's an anatomist, a medical doctor, and a writer. And she had an idea for what she thought would be the perfect human being. And here's what the article says. Roberts collaborated with artists and biologists to build a model of her own body that was modified from head to toe with adaptations intended to improve on the human form. Together, the team created a startling Alice Roberts 2.0. So she calls it the Alice Roberts 2.0. Still human-like, but with some very unsettling differences. They even call them unsettling, the people that are in the field of anatomy and biology, and they think that this woman is smart or something.
That's putting it mildly, that they're unsettling.
Yes, it is putting it mildly. Some of these differences, I don't know if you read this when I sent it to you, but here are the differences. Flaring feline ears, so she gives herself these feline ears like a cat, a marsupial's pouch, which is very, very disturbing, and oversized octopus-like eyeballs. So that's just something that seems totally unconnected. But if you look at the image of this woman, you'll also notice the sculpture they made of what they consider to be a perfect human is that she has the legs of a bird, the legs of a chicken, just like certain demons when they appear, and just like Momo. And Momo is a deformed woman, just like the Baba Yaga. And when you read, at least when I read, I'm not sure if some people describe it differently. This just happened to be the depiction, the description that I read of Momo back in August of last year, and it relates beautifully, but in a really dark way. The Momo profile itself, I'm sorry, Kev, go ahead.
Go for it.
It just says the Momo profile itself. This comes from an article from news.com.au. The Momo profile itself features a disturbing image of a distorted young woman with eyes bulging out of their sockets, straggly black hair, and bird legs. that is unrelated, and yet it is directly related to a seemingly random story about an anatomist who thinks that this is what the human body should look like with bird legs and giant bulging eyes. It's the same description of the Baba Yaga, the same description of the Gorgon, one of the three sisters, like Medusa, and all of that connects directly to the Gorgon, the Demigorgon, the monster that comes out of the Upside Down in Stranger Things. All of this is connected together.
Absolutely. And just to, in Slavic folklore, like Ryan was saying there, Baba Yaga is a supernatural being or one of a trio of sisters of the same name who appears as a deformed and or ferocious looking woman. Baba Yaga flies around in a mortar, wields a pestle, and dwells deep in the forest. And get this, folks, usually described as standing on chicken legs.
Chicken legs. I didn't even know that, Kev.
There you go.
So the Baba Yaga is too.
Yep, absolutely. That's how it describes it. So they're all connected, dude. And if you people want to go and check out Momo, look for the Momo sculpture. Go onto Google Images, Bing Images, and scroll down for the full thing because we're so used to just seeing the face. But it's actually a sculpture, and you will see exactly what legs it's standing on. And it's the legs of a bird. And of course, the sculpture itself is entitled Mother Bird.
Mother Bird. Just kind of like Lady Gaga. She calls herself what? Mother Monster. Eminem calls himself the Monster. The monster from Stranger Things is called the Shadow Monster. A shadow is, if you look up the definition, this is seemingly disconnected from our subject matter tonight, but it's directly related in another way. If you look up the definition of an umbrella, and then how that connects with H.P. Lovecraft and the Necronomicon, the umbrella is broken into two words, umbra and ella. And you have songs like Rihanna's Umbrella, where they say umbrella, Ella, 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 and they talk about the Rain Man, which is really common throughout the entertainment industry. And the umbra of the umbrella creates a shadow because it blocks out light, so it creates a shadow world. And it's like the Upside Down, the shadow world, the mirror world, and that's the shadow monster, Mother Momo.
Don't they talk about the Gargan in Stranger Things Season 1 as well?
Just because of the name Demigorgon.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Strange how that program comes out and is so popular, Ryan, right at this very time. I don't do coincidence, and I honestly think that is art mirroring life.
Very much so. And you mentioned also in the Baba Yaga. I didn't mention it. I had it written down, but you mentioned that the Baba Yaga lives in the woods. Is that what you read there?
Yes. Flying about in a mortar, wielding a pestle. Sounds terrifying.
That's also the domain of Slender Man, is the woods. And that connects also with the story of Casey Hathaway and this little missing boy, 3 years old, I think he is, went missing for between 48 and 72 hours. And he said that a bear took care of him while he was in the woods. And I heard Clyde Lewis tell a story from the 1800s about, I think it was there was a little girl, 3 years old. She went missing. She said she was taken care of by like a dog man type entity. But that is so similar to all of the things that we've talked about, because this kid, when he came back, when they finally found him, he was exposed to extreme elements for almost 3 days. And the initial reports were that he was totally fine. Freezing rain, freezing temperatures, sinkholes all over the property. And they found him in the woods. He was in a bush with a bunch of vines wrapped around him and thorns, just like the girl in the 1800s. The vines and the thorns, that's how Slender Man is depicted. That's how Slender Man actually takes his victims in the woods, and that's how he takes them into the Upside Down or the other world in Slender Man's universe. And that is depicted visually in the Slender Man movie. And I thought it was weird that this kid is found in brush with vines and tentacles, and then he comes home, and when the mother was asked, "How's your kid doing?" after this massive search for your boy, after this national news story, and the mom said, "He's fine. He wants to watch Netflix." And I thought that was weird for a 3-year-old boy. And then I started thinking, with things like Stranger Things on Netflix and these powerful images that become so popular so quick, that communicate to us in some subconscious way, maybe through platforms like Netflix that have 130 plus million subscribers, all the energy that we pay attention, all the money that we pay for those subscriptions, all that energy that goes into it, we are using those platforms, or they are being used through us to summon this force from another world, Kev.
Absolutely. And there was a force from another world at work today because maybe unbeknown to you, the whole synchronicity that occurred around my conversation with Charlie Robinson today, obviously he was just randomly happened to be listening to you at the time. And I think it's going to lead to a show between yourself and Charlie, but here's the synchronicity, because Charlie has a book called The Octopus of Global Control. So it's almost as if one of these tentacles, Ryan, has entangled us into this kind of topic, into this rabbit hole right now.
Yeah, and the tentacles are also very common because of Medusa with the serpentine hair, Ursula and the Little Mermaid, Mr. Waternoose in Monsters, Inc., who runs the power company. He's got the crab-like legs, the face hugger from Alien, the little spider-like entity, and that's basically what the parasite monster looks like, the shadow monster looks like in Stranger Things. It's kind of like a giant, tentacly-like creature.
And of
like
course, an AI, it could express itself in various shapes and forms as well. I don't know why I can't get away from some kind of AI element in this. And I know I might be suffering from confirmation bias, Ryan, because I look at so much of that information and I may be making things fit where possibly they don't. But I definitely do feel that a lot of the strangeness of the times that we live in is in no small part down to things like the D-Wave, CERN, and the science experiments that we know nothing about. If they've got that D-Wave that they've told us about, what on earth's name are they playing with that we have no idea even exists yet?
You think about maybe like a super advanced, beyond anything we can really fathom, but a super advanced alien race or something that's otherworldly that can peer into our dimension. Maybe things like free will and our open willingness to give up our humanity through forms of manipulation that we just decide, you know what, I'd rather be safe and secure by perception than free. That's kind of a political argument. People say that I'd rather be safe and secure. Okay, I'm okay with a few liberties being taken from me. But if you expanded that to the whole human race, if you had some force coming from somewhere else, we think like we would go to battle with guns and with bombs, and we'd destroy the planet, which is part of the battlefield. Maybe some super advanced species, some super advanced form of life, something that's uploaded itself into a computer, something that's developed a computer that's far beyond anything we can imagine. And we're now beginning to communicate with it with things like the D-Wave, but it has come into our world through other means. It's come into our world and it has taken control of certain people, perhaps, let's say in the technology industry, some of the big names, and through those people, kind of like the characters in Terminator Genesis were being controlled with the nanobots in their bodies, but it looked like they were human, that they're being used to build this network, to build this IoT, and to transform the planet to prepare it for the arrival of this shadow monster, let's call it, to prepare it for the arrival of something from somewhere else that can inhabit this world without, or can inhabit this world with a form of power and control over the people that live here by manipulating those people into giving up their humanity, by giving up the very essence of what makes them beings, giving up your soul and everything to this entity, to this energy. It's, people call it the devil, people call it evil, whatever you want to call it. It's like something, I'm being metaphoric but also literal. It kind of seems like there's something like that, some force, extraterrestrial, dimension.
I think force, energy. You see, we've got a habit of anthropomorphizing absolutely everything, right? It's like when you mentioned earlier on, you called something she, Momo, she instead of it. And I think when we're thinking interdimensionally as well, I think we've got a habit of doing that even unconsciously. We don't realize we're doing it. We talk about demons and aliens, and we think of physical things, things that we've seen in the past, points of reference that we've associated with those words. But we create all of our own monsters in our own mind. And that's not to say that those things don't exist, but not in the way, shape, and form that we imagine. You know, you come out of this third dimension and go into any of the other ones, and it's not going to be the same as here. That's inevitable. That's obvious. But we could literally just be talking about raw energy, you know, frequency, Ryan. And it finds a way to express itself, to maneuver around in our lower density, our physical dimension. So absolutely, I'm with you more. Energy than entity, and definitely one of the forces of, dare I say it, nature that scientists certainly don't talk enough about yet.
It reminds me of the Fifth Element, that giant mass of pure evil and darkness, and they'd shoot the missiles into it, and every time they'd attack it, it would grow stronger and more powerful.
Yes, absolutely. The more attention we pay these things, it seems to be, it grows more powerful. Hence, when you have something like Netflix and million after million after million of people tuning into these things, that in itself, you know, I mentioned that we do create our own monsters, Ryan. Now, how much do you think our own consciousness or subconscious minds could be, speculating again, obviously, giving birth to all of these things we've been describing tonight? Not a creation or an invasion from another dimension, but literally something that we ourselves are creating.
Something that we're manifesting, yeah, like a thought form.
Yep.
A tulpa.
Like the X-Files, I always bring up the Trash Man in the last season of that, when it was just a kind of graffiti on the wall, but so many people started paying attention to it. Like you say, a tulpa came to life.
It also reminds me of a couple of other things. It reminds me, because you and I talked about Bird Box, that evil, that unseen force manifested as trauma or fear, and then people committed suicide after they saw it. And that's very much connected to Momo and Slender Man and these suicide challenges, which, by the way, I personally don't think, I don't think you do either, Kev, that this is in any relation to, or has any relation to, these other challenges. I see people try to connect Momo and these suicide challenges to like a Tide Pod challenge.
No, not even in the same ballpark, Ryan. I'm with you there.
No, it's not the same thing at all. I saw somebody posted a message somewhere. It said something about it's basically the same thing as this, like the cinnamon challenge, where you take a big spoonful of cinnamon. It's like, no, I don't think taking a big spoonful of cinnamon and trying not to sneeze or blow it out your nose is the same as committing suicide. There's a huge difference.
Exactly. You know, that's why I wouldn't even put the two of them in the same sentence. And, you know, it's like I said in opening, we're going to live in a world where there is going to be these memes, these challenges come along from time to time. Some harmless, some fun and quite harmful at the same time. I say fun because the sick side of me has to laugh at people who want to eat Tide Pods in the first place. And I understand that can be dangerous. However, I almost see that like universal karma going on there. You know, if you get sick from eating one of those, hell mend you.
Well, there's that one, and then there's the people that snort condoms through their nose. And again, that's unrelated to Momo.
Yeah, exactly. It's a totally different thing that we're talking about altogether. And, you know, before I let Ryan go, he's going to record another show today. And I'm going to have Don Wiskin on after the break, folks. We're going to be talking about heart drops, Extendivite. We're going to be taking your phone calls, stuff like that. But on a really more serious note, whether it's Momo, whether it's the Blue Whale Challenge that they say claimed over 100 lives in Russia over the past couple of years, whether it's Slender Man, doesn't matter what gives you the impetus to have the conversation. It's just important that as parents, we do have that conversation with our children at some point. You know, just today, myself and Anne, we were asking Kevin if he's ever come across the Momo Challenge, and thankfully, touch wood, he hasn't. However, during the course of this show tonight, we find out one of our very good listeners, a friend of everyone in the chat, Nancy, hadn't been made aware of this, and her child was actually being affected by an image of Momo that he had seen. So I think it's time, you know, sit down, just like we used to with the birds and the bees, and have that conversation. At least this one isn't quite as uncomfortable as the former. But whether, like I say, it's these challenges, whether it's some of the scam artists online, some of the real deviants that are hiding online as well, I think it's remiss, almost, you know, it's unforgivable if we don't explain the dangers of something that more and more children from earlier and earlier ages are learning to use at this time, the internet. And I'm sure, Ryan, you would second me on that one, brother. And let people know again where they can hear your podcast.
I would second you on that, Kev. I think you summed that up very well. That's why I do my show, The Secret Teachings. I know that's one of the reasons you do your show. That's why people like Clyde Lewis does Ground Zero, because there are things that other people, they live their lives. They want to be entertained. They want to hear something. I like listening to radio to be entertained. I want to learn something, though. And so I want to do a show. I know you want to do a show that you'd like to listen to and that you can learn something from. And that's why we do these types of subjects. They're woo-hoo sometimes, and they're fun, and they're exciting. I love connecting dots and seeing the connection between those things and how they relate to other things that are seemingly unconnected. Being informed with this information can allow us to have control and to be empowered rather than being subjected to things, and in some cases, things we don't have any idea where they come from.
We'll be back after the break. Ryan Gable, ladies and gentlemen, thesecretteachings.info.